Hello, all my JavaScript friends. This is TheVirtuoid, aka Mike Smith, and this is our factory game. So we covered the stats. That's on the left-hand side of the screen. That is that section. We've covered the store. That is on the right-hand side of the screen. That is this section. So today we're going to cover the world, which is that section right smack dab in the middle of it. Now, of course, this is the most important thing, and I know earlier I said that on the previous video that we're going to be able to do this in 2 videos. Actually, I think we can do it in 1. So the idea here is that we'll purchase some things. I'll do some purchases here, some straights and some curves and all that. And let's purchase an extractor. Let's see, do I want that one? No, I want that one right there. Let's purchase a couple more straights. And so the idea here now is that we can click on the extractor, move that over. Let me zoom in a little bit so we can see here. Notice that as I zoom, I'm using the mouse wheel here, and I can zoom in and out with the mouse wheel. And so as I do that, whoops, I hit the wrong button. Oh well. All right, let's buy another extractor. And let's zoom in a little bit more so we can get everybody on the screen here. Yeah, there we go. So about extractor, I'll put the extractor down. That's going to start the ore moving out. And let's put a straight. And notice that as I move the cursor, or as I move the mouse, the conveyor moves with me, and I can hit the R key and it will rotate the building. So that will allow me to rotate any building I've got inside this mouse. I can rotate. So we'll put that down there. Notice it still has another one there. As long as I have inventory, and I got 10 more left, it's going to keep that little icon with the mouse. So we'll go there. And we'll go there. It looks like now we need to go back over to on the left-hand side and click on one of the curves. And let's do that way. And there's a curve. So let's go back over to the left-hand side and get straights again. I don't think I'm going to have enough straights. I'm going to be one short. So let's go over to the factory store and let's purchase a straight. Let's click on the straight. And there we go. So that will put them, as soon as the ore goes in, the cash will increase. And in fact, let me just show you that here real quick. You'll notice that the cash will increase every time there's a piece of ore that goes in. So that's basically what the world does. The world controls, let me go in the middle here so you can really see it. The world controls the placement of objects on the screen and the actual drawing of the objects on the screen, whether that's the extractors, the conveyors, the purifiers, or the combinators, or in this case the deposits, which are those lightly colored what are they called? Yeah, the lightly colored circles there are my mineral deposits, and they match up to the extractors. And and of course the ground itself too. So let's go over into our system. We'll go back to the full screen here. Let's go over into our code and let's take a look and see how all that operates. Very first thing I want to cover here is a particular JavaScript called the world data. Now the world data is an object here that represents each individual piece on the world itself. So for example, if I go back, let's go back to the screen. Let's go back to our world screen here, since that's the one you can see. If you notice, as I click on the world here, a little green box appears. And when that green box appears, that gives me information on that particular building or whatever. So for instance, I've just clicked on the extractor there. Let's go over to the stats screen. You can see the extractor information here. Extractor, aetherite, the speed, and all the upgrades and all that kind of fun stuff. Let's go back to the world here. And so what happens now in each individual one of these is that the world data has there is a instance of world data for each place where I can click. And right now my world is 50 by 50, so that's 2,500 different class objects or instances of the world data class. And within that world data, let's go back to our data. Within that world data, we really have 2 pieces of information: the building and the deposit. So basically, if both deposit and building are null, that's a blank space. There's absolutely nothing there. If deposit has something, it's going to be one of the mineral deposits that you see on the screen here, like the greenish one on the left-hand side, the 2 purplish ones at the very top here. And there used to be one underneath the it used to be a red one underneath the extractor here, but obviously not anymore since we put an extractor there. And basically, the world data allows me to be able to set the deposit, add the building, remove the building, all that kind of fun stuff. We can remove the buildings. We can highlight something and hit the delete key, and it will wipe out the building for you automatically. So I just want to make sure you understood that we have an object there that has an instance of class for each individual cell within our world, all 2,500 of them. So with world data out of the way, let's go into the world itself. Now, just like all my other objects here, I've got it split into world and world UI, where world allows me to be able to do the business logic of everything, whatever I have to do from the business side, while UI handles all of the UI stuff, the clicking, the dropping of the objects, and blah, 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 and so on and so forth. The world basically defines information that's very critical. Like, for instance, I've got the height and the depth here automatically defined. This basically is I have 50 units by 50 units, and the unit size is 64 pixels. So that tells me how much, but basically I still need to have a pixel value for Phaser.js to be able to do what it has to do. This distribution here is how many of the initial deposits I'm going to put on the screen. So as you can tell here, I've got more I got 25 aetheryte deposits, while the zenithite only has 5 deposits on the screen itself, and each one of these represents a different color. Constructor is no big deal. We set the mineral positions. This is very important because we're going to need to be able to know where those deposits are. We initialize every single piece of unit or every single part of our world with a new world data, which is world data without any arguments, gives you a null deposit and a null building. And then we get ourselves our distribution center. That's the thing in the middle. Let me bring back to the screen here. That's that thing right here in the middle. That's the distribution screen right there. Go back over to our code. Then we go to the initialization section. Initialization section is where it's going to be very important. Is that we now have to initialize our world, and by that I mean basically we need to put deposits down on the system. We need to be able to put the distribution center up in there, and we also need to be able to put in all of the different deposits. Now, they're randomized each time you start the game. Each time you hit F5, you're going to get a new random distribution. So one of the things that's important here is that we don't want to have deposits on top of deposits. So one of the things we have to do is that we have a particular array called taken positions that allows me to be able to sit there and say, these positions have already been taken either by the distribution center, as it is in this case, or by deposits, so that when we get a random position, which is way down here somewhere. Where is it? There it is. When we get the random position, we just keep looping through until we find a hit where it doesn't have a deposit already or a distribution center already in the code. And that's no big deal there. And so that's what all of this code right here does, is it distributes all of that information. It initializes all the information and distributes the deposits, in random places on the world. Get position, set position just allows me to be able to set a particular position onto the map, that our internal map here, so we can very quickly and immediately grab a particular the world data at a particular position. All my world data information is stored inside this map, and so I can set that world data information as I do in set position, or I can get it from the get position. Add building is a very important one here. Is that the add building is going to be able to basically add the building to the world data or to the grid data automatically, and all of that is basically I need to validate positions. I need to make sure that we don't already have a building in that particular position, and I need to be able to basically set images, get positions, set the world data, things like that. One of the big things I want to do here is that if you put an extractor down, for example, first of all, let me rephrase it. First of all, I automatically set all of my buildings to active. But if you set an extractor down upon the world and it's not over a deposit, which is what this checks for, then I go ahead and inactivate the extractor. And that becomes very important when we're doing the updates for the system. We need to be able to sit there and say, hey, this extractor is not active, so therefore, we're not going to do anything. And that's all that add building does. Has building really quickly just says, hey, I've got this building here. I've got a building, or I don't have a building. I do a remove building, and here's, I got to tell the game we've got a building that's been removed. so we can get it out of the way. We got all the different mineral deposits, get random positions, valid positions, no big deal there. So that's basically all there is to the world. It's just basically a manager of all the different 2,500 world data objects up on the screen so that we can do whatever management wants to do. The beauty and how everything works is inside the world UI. So let's take a look at world UI. Now, world UI is big. It's probably it along with the transporter, which we'll cover in our next video. It has a lot of different pieces, moving pieces to it. But I'm not going to go. Well, actually, I'm going to go through a lot of it here, but I'm going to go through the really important things. Is that again, the UI draws everything out. So when we do the start. And you'll notice if you're looking through some of these videos and looking through this code here, on the UI section, I always have a start. That allows the game to be able to have, and the game's start routine to be able to say UI start, UI start, UI start, and so it initializes everything. Well, the world UI, like the store UI and all of the stat UIs, are all exactly the same. The idea here is that the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to physically place the, well, actually, first thing I'm going to do is physically place that ground texture. That's that ground texture you see right here. That's what first thing that I physically do. The second thing that I do is that I put all the deposits up on the screen. Next thing I do is I put the distribution center up on the screen. That's what that section is there. This is the important thing. The building factory. What does this building factory do? Well, basically what that means here is that when I physically place something upon the world, I need to know what's been placed. And each building type, is literally a type variable, has a unique identifier. And that's going to be, extractor aetherite, extractor pyrite, luminite, blah, 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 so far and so forth. When that happens, I need to know exactly how to build that. And I'm going to be using this factory pattern here to basically say, I need to extract, like, for instance, if I put a conveyor straight down, I'm going to know that I need to call the conveyor class to be able to draw that out. And so the conveyor class will then say, hey, draw this hey, dude, draw out this particular conveyor belt, this particular conveyor belt here, or draw out this X intersection conveyor belt, or draw out this magnanium combinator, or draw out this luminite purifier, any one of those kind of things. So the building factory is extremely important to make everything as generic as possible. So I'm not going to have one giant if else when I place down a building. I'm just going to go to the building factory and say, here's your type. What I got to build? And the building factory is going to say, you need to build an extractor or a conveyor or a combinator, or purifier, or whatever in that case. So that's really, really important. Start zone and start inputs. Very, very important. We'll get to those in just a quick. Well, let's get to them right now. Start zoom. I said start zone. Start zoom is some code here to be able to zoom. If we go back over to, let's go back to the full screen. I can use the mouse wheel to zoom in and zoom out on the screen. I am going to admit to you one thing here is that this one section, the zooming, which is not only this part, but also on further down, on wheel, which is the routine, which we'll show you here in just a second. This is the wheel routine that does the actual zooming. I will admit that this particular section here, I had to get AI to help me with. I know everybody's just sitting there just disgusted with me at this particular point in time, but hey, it's a fantastic tool to be used, and if it can get me the answer real quick instead of having to try to dig through all those particular documentations, and all power to it. Did I review the code before I put it in there? You darn right I did. Did I change it? You darn right I did. Never ever put AI code into production no matter what you do. Review it and make sure you understand it first. If you do that, you're going to learn a whole heck of a lot from it. Anyway, so that's what the start zoom is. This is the start inputs. This is where I have, when you press the escape key, it stops the game. When you press the R key, it rotates. When you press the delete key, it deletes a building. Pointer move is what happens as I move the pointer. So for instance, as I move the pointer, let me go to the stats screen here. As I move the pointer, you notice that the cursor position changes as I move the pointer. That's where the pointer move comes in handy there. Every time a pointer move occurs, it's going to send an event out to game, and game updates the stats. Pointer down is when I click on something. the system, and we'll show you that there's two different things that can happen on that one. Whether I'm just clicking on to get the little green square up there to get some information, or I'm clicking to place a building. Here's another pointer move, and that's a mistake on my part. I don't know how we got two of them in there, but we got two of them in there, so life goes on. And then here's, boy, I just messed that up. And so here's the wheel part, and the wheel is what we just got finished showing there. So this sets up all of my different inputs, and I've now got from both the keyboard and the mouse, I'm ready to go and process them. Here's the preload for loading up those to distribution center and the ground images. This is the place which allows me to actually place the physical building onto the screen, and we'll get to that here shortly. And it's no big deal there. Set active inventory, remove active inventory. This basically allows me to set any active building inventory of buildings that I've placed down, because I don't, when I go through the whole system here and I update it, which is actually a little bit further up here because I forgot to do update. Yeah, update basically runs each and every single time or every single click onto the system. But I do within World store each one of the buildings that I have placed down. And if a building is active, then I do whatever I need to do with it. If it's an extractor, do this. If it's a purifier, do that. If it's a combinator, do that. And that allows me, instead of having to go through all 2,500 different items, to sit there and say, I've got to update all these. I'm just going to update just the individual worlds on there. So that's what the active inventory and all that does. The create or is something that is done for both the extractors and purifiers. It allows me to be able to sit there and say, okay, I am now going to have to create an or somehow. And that occurs back up here in the update, is that if the timing is correct, because each extractor, each purifier, each combinator has a certain timing when it can produce an ore, and you can change that, by leveling it up. It will produce the ore, produce the alloy, and all that happens way down here in create ore and create alloy. Notice each one of these says transporter add. We're not going to get a transporter video. We're not going to get the transporter here today. We're going to get that in our next video, so that's going to be a lot of fun. All right, a clear active inventory and clear grid selection. All of this particular thing here is when we place when something occurs and when we click on the button when we click the mouse button and we get active information or information about that particular square. This helps kind of clears that information out once we have to do something else. If we click outside, for example, on delete will delete a particular building because that's when we hit the delete key. On rotate will rotate a building or rotate a building on the on the cursor. So if for instance, if we were to go, let's go to the world screen here, and let's get one of the curves here. Make sure that's in, yeah. So if I hit the R key, you notice it rotates. So every time you hit the R key, that little routine there will rotate the active inventory item that is attached to the mouse cursor itself. I can hit escape here to get rid of that. And let's go back to our code. There we are. On escape clears everything out. As you can tell, when I hit escape key earlier, it just cleared everything out. On pointer move is what happens with the on pointer move is what happens when we move the actual pointer itself. What we can do, there's two different places here. First of all, on the pointer move here is that as the cursor moves, if we have an active placement, which means that's that little object that appears next to the. Let's go back over here. Let me grab another. That's that object that appears right next to the cursor. Once that, get back over my code. Once, if that is active, then we sit there and we change the code to be able to make sure it stays with the cursor. If the pointer is down, then we move the entire screen. So for example, let's go back to the world screen here. If I click and hold, I can then move the screen just by, as I'm moving here. If the pointer is currently down, then the whole screen will move like that. So that is, I just pressed escape here to get rid of the active green square that was on the screen. So that's what's the two different things that can happen when you do the on pointer move. And of course, it does. It always updates the cursor position, no matter what it does. Create building. Well, actually, that's what gets called when we drop the building onto the screen. I'm pointing down as a really good one here. So that will allow us to be able to do two different things. First of all, if we don't have an active image attached to our cursor, we have selected an inventory and we're hovering, like I showed you earlier, we're hovering over the world. If we have that active placement, this will allow us to be able to put that particular building up onto the screen itself here, and that's when we do the add building. And then once the add building gets in there, then we destroy the deposit. We make sure that when we create the building itself, and that physically puts it on the screen. We add it to our world because we've got to add the building to the world, and we get rid of the deposit itself. And then the most important thing here is we call the inventory remove. That tells the game, hey, take out a piece of inventory, because you had attached a conveyor belt to it. Now we need to remove that conveyor belt, and the game will say, sure, no problem. If that doesn't happen, then this is what draws that little green arrow there. And we also send the grid selected to the event over to the game, and the game says, hey, stat info, I've been selected something. Stat info will read the world data and say, yeah, nothing here, no big deal. Or it'll say, oh, we got an extractor, which shows some information here. Or we got a deposit, shows some information there, and all that kind of fun stuff. So that's what happens there. And then finally, the on wheel itself is what I said is that ChatGPT. Well, ChatGPT was actually the AI using JetBrains. That's what helped me write that code to be able to make sure that worked out correctly, because I had no clue how to do it, and I couldn't quite understand the documentation on Phaser.js. I'm not afraid to admit it. Anyway, doesn't really matter, but that's all there is to the world UI. It's not really a whole lot. There's a lot there, but there's not really a whole lot there if you just kind of think about it. Really, all that we're having to deal with here is that how are we going to drop the buildings? How are we going to update the stats information? How are we going to zoom in, zoom out on the world? How are we going to move the world up, down, left, and right on the screen so that we can access all different parts of the world? And that's basically what the world UI does. So next time, we are going to cover the transporter, because this is the fun one. This is the one that moves all the ores and everything along the conveyor belts. Thanks for watching. Subscribe to this channel to view more videos. Click on the like button on this video and visit us at TheVirtuoid.com. Also, support us on Patreon, where you can get access to member-only videos. Links are down below. Again, thank you very much for watching, and keep on coding.